Hello and welcome back. This is a channel. My name's Kara, and this is a channel where I'm documenting a 1 year long no buy or really low buy project for the year of 2020. I'm doing that because it helps me to keep a really tight budget, and I'm doing that because I'm paying off a ton of student loans. So if you're interested in those things, stick around. At the end of every month, I check in and share how much I was able to pay on my student loans and what percentage of my net income that is. The goal for the year is to use 75% of my net income to pay down my student loans. And most of the time, I think I can pull it off. This month is looking a little tough though, but we'll see. um, and then, of course, there's the rest of the month, and I try to make a video every week. So for the month of March, I have been talking about my grocery plan and how I eat and how I do it on such a tight budget. Sometimes people find that shocking because the way that I eat is what people are now calling a carnivore diet or zero carb. I only eat animal products, so meat and eggs and some dairy, although not a ton. And that is because I find it to be the best, absolutely the best thing that I've ever done for myself, health wise. So I don't have any plans to change, and I enjoy it a lot. I have been doing it for a year and a half, and again, I have felt the best I've ever felt in my life. And so while it may seem, I don't know why people think that eating meat is so expensive. I always found it expensive to eat vegetables because half of them would go bad before I finished them. But as it is now, I eat every single shred of food that I purchase. There's no food waste in my life, and I really like that. So, anyway, I have a super tight budget, and I still manage to eat only meat. This video, I want to make sure to talk about the health benefits that I've experienced and the health reasons why somebody might choose to eat a carnivore diet. And next week, I am going to talk about why I think that eating more meat is actually good for the planet and good for environmental and ethical reasons. And that's definitely not a commonly held opinion, but I am convinced that eating more meat and raising more meat would be healthy for the planet and a net benefit for human health and the planet's health. Surprise. So I'm going to list in the description of this video all kinds of health experts who I have turned to over the last couple of years, learning about the carnivore diet and um, learning about human health in general, but particularly eating a animal foods heavy diet. Not all of them advocate going full carnivore, and that's great. And not all of them, they don't all agree with each other. And I think that's important. I think it's important to listen to lots of different experts and take what applies to your situation and just be aware of the rest. And maybe someday that information will get more personally relevant as well. So there's lots of experts. I'll have them there, and you can certainly go exploring for yourself. If you're on YouTube, just search carnivore, and now there's dozens and dozens of people sharing their experiences, and some with nutrition and medical qualifications, and some are just people like myself having a really good experience. And some that aren't having a really good experience, but I am. What I've experienced, and this is in comparison to, I already have had a lifetime of very good health. I'm lucky, plain and simple. So I didn't have any huge problems to overcome. And still, I noticed an improvement and a shocking improvement in my health and in how I felt when I stopped eating anything that comes from a plant. So if it can make a big improvement for somebody like me who didn't even really have problems, I would feel like I'm hiding something really good for people who might actually have, you know, early onset diabetes or even full diabetes. There are people reversing diabetes. There are people reversing inflammatory problems, people reversing autoimmune disorders. Um, Go find stories of people on a carnivore diet. It's really amazing what people have been able to do for their health. So for me, I've gone from good to great. Other people are going from really serious chronic conditions that are limiting their life to thriving. So even when I say that I went from good to great, didn't have a whole lot that was really wrong or bad. I have better sleep now. I have this wonderful, steady energy all day long. At the end of my workday, I'm taking the stairs two at a time, just like when I showed up in the morning. Um, my mood is generally really steady and good. I find it easy to be calm and optimistic, and I just feel a whole lot more grounded and ready for the world. Um, I hardly get sick anymore. I don't want to say that I don't get sick because I've had a couple of colds for a day or two in the last year and a half, but I I don't get sick very often anymore at all. And that is remarkable because of my work situation, where the computer that I work on is also a station where 40 other employees clock in and clock out. So I kind of don't even want to think about that keyboard and that mouse and everything near my workstation. But I don't want to claim that I'm, you know, the Iron Woman who never gets sick, because of course that could happen. And, you know, it doesn't make me bulletproof. It just means that I have good health. Um, in this year and a half, my skin has gotten a lot clearer. I have had a really consistent and easy and comfortable menstrual cycle. Um, I get cramps, but they're very mild and maybe only every other month or so, not every time. Very little mood swing or anything that you might call PMS, which is nice because, yeah, like that has happened in my life. And to be a little testy and snarly for a day or so wasn't so fun. But I find now that it comes and it goes, no problem, no real change in my mood. Um, One of the best things that I've noticed about going carnivore is that within about 2 to 3 weeks, I noticed that I did not care about any other food anymore. And what I mean is I don't have any cravings. I'm not thinking about other foods. I don't feel like I'm deprived or missing out. I used to be that person who would have a grocery cart full of vegetables and, very virtuous food, very healthy, all fresh all the time. And then there'd be a box of cookies on top because I kind of thought I deserved it. And I would go home and I would eat that box of cookies all at once. And then I'd want more, of course. I was always sort of white knuckling it and holding on until some designated cheat day where I was going to eat whatever I wanted. And I would also, I had a lot of emotional eating going on, and I would do things like I would go to the McDonald's farther away from where I lived so that nobody would see me. And I would eat it in my car, and I would get rid of the wrappings and any evidence that I had eaten fast food because I wanted to be seen as a healthy person and health conscious, but I would be just compelled by cravings. The thought of a cheeseburger and fries used to just, it would obsess me for days until I gave into it. Um, and and that kind of obsession and thinking about a particular food or wanting something sweet or wanting something, salty, fatty, delicious, those feelings, that part of my brain is just silent. Just silent. And that is the best part to me. Absolutely the best part. For one, like it's the best thing that I could ever experience. And I didn't expect that to happen. It just did. And now to know that it's probably because what I am eating is so nutrient dense and so satisfying that just there's nothing left for my brain to get excited about. There's nothing left for me to crave. Um, I do sometimes find like I would notice a food, and I mean, I work at a grocery store. I'm surrounded by snack foods. I'm surrounded by well marketed, well designed, engineered food to be amazing and taste so good, and I don't want any of it. It might as well be the furniture. But sometimes I'll be, going through the store, and my job is to keep the shelves full, so I look at everything and I'm ordering more of it when we need it. And it used to be muesli, just like dried fruit and oats and like this heavy kind of breakfast cereal. I would think about, oh yeah, like the chewiness of it would sound kind of good. And honestly, by the time I got to the end of that shelf, the thought was gone. So I haven't really missed anything and I haven't craved anything. And that kind of freedom in my mind, absolutely the best thing. Another thing that I've noticed for me personally is that my taste for alcohol is greatly reduced, nearly gone. And that's great because I don't have much money to spend on alcohol and it's not that good for you anyway. So, okay, fine. I don't really need it anymore. I used to really enjoy beer and now I can't stand beer. And so I guess if you're a beer lover, word to the wise, if you try carnivore, you might not enjoy beer quite as much. And I realize that's hard to imagine, but it took about a month and I would be drinking a beer and just realizing it tastes bitter. It's kind of giving me a headache before I can even finish one drink. And I've tried some gluten-free beers and I don't get the headache, but I still don't like how it tastes anymore. I've never drank hard alcohol. I've never enjoyed that. And my taste for wine is going away. Yeah, it's really kind of a non-event now to have a drink. Um, I have found I have found that those darn sparkling waters that are spiked, I can drink those and enjoy them, but I don't have the money for it. And so I'm really glad that I don't have a big alcohol craving anymore because those could get me in a little bit of trouble. I'm so basic. So those are some of the things that I've enjoyed about being carnivore. And as a final thing that isn't about health exactly, but definitely feels so good, is it's so simple. It's so simple. I know last week when I shared my grocery haul, that was sort of the surprise moment that I eat a carnivore diet. Uh, it's so easy to make one shopping trip in the month and go to one farm, one ranch, wherever I'm going. But for now, it's woods because it's just the easiest. I go there, I come back with 30 some pounds of meat, put it in the freezer, and I'm done shopping for a month. Just done. And then it's so easy to get out 3 or 4 portions at a time and know that that's 3 or 4 days of eating. I don't really stress about, well, what am I going to eat now? Well, duh, I'm going to eat meat. And how am I going to cook it? It doesn't matter. It's really easy. And sometimes, like 99% of the time, I just eat it raw. I can't recommend that. That's a risk that you have to choose for yourself if you want to do that. But I think raw meat is delicious and I eat it that way most of the time. In the last 2 weeks, I can't think of when I cooked my food. I got into the carnivore diet from a low carb diet experience. So I used to just eat normal food. I grew up eating what I'm pretty sure is normal food. My family ate meat and vegetables and bread and pasta, and we gardened and my dad hunted. So a lot of our food was really nice and homemade and home procured. But plenty of it was also from grocery stores and just normal, what they would probably call the standard American diet. And it was the 80s and 90s, my mom was pretty health conscious. She was always kind of trying to pay attention to health. And in those days, we were all told to eat whole grains and lots of carbohydrates. All of my sporting coaches, my entire life, would have us carb load the day before our sporting events. And and the trouble was always with fat. You don't want to eat fat. Everything needed to be low fat, and that was printed on a lot of the food at the time. And nowadays, of course, they print all kinds of different things on the food, but low fat was the thing in the late 80s and 90s. And I just thought that was right because that's what everything said. That's what all of the nutrition guidelines said, and most of them still do. Um, Anyway, in my late 20s, I encountered the wonder of CrossFit, and I love it. And I don't do it anymore because it's expensive, but I did have a really good experience going to CrossFit and learning from them about what most people would call sort of a paleo approach to eating. Um, Meat, fish, nuts, seeds, a little starch, very little fruit, no sugar. I'm pretty sure that's the little like CrossFit food mantra. And it's a great way to eat. It is so good for you. If you don't want to go full carnivore, completely, first of all, I completely understand. And second of all, I would be just as happy for you to see you following a paleo approach. It's really, really, um, really healthy. It cuts out a lot of the real prime problem foods that cause chronic problems that can accumulate into um, diabetes and metabolic disorders, heart disease. It's really good. So anyway, I learned about eating that way and I tried it out and found it to be extremely helpful to me. I wasn't overweight, but I was, I don't know, a little extra weight on my frame, and that dropped right away. And it almost sort of reset my adult um, kind of base weight by like 15 pounds or so. Um, so I had always been kind of between 150 and 155, and now I'm usually closer to like 140, sometimes a little under 140. And that's without any effort. It just sort of is like the reset point of like, okay, when you're eating right, this is what your body will sort of stay at. And that's nice. That's really nice to just be able to like stay there and not really think about it. So anyway, I had done a low carb approach to eating for a few years and really enjoyed it. And in the meantime, I was learning about nutrition. I read Mark Sisson's The Primal Blueprint. That had a that was a great education about metabolism. Good book, The Primal Blueprint, Mark Sisson. If you're in grocery stores, you might see the brand Primal Kitchen. He started that. Um, there were other books. There were other people that I was watching their lectures and learning from. But in general, I just embraced the low carb way of eating. And I actually think that there could be a time in my life where I eat that way again. Maybe. But I don't have any plans to do that. And there are two main reasons why I wouldn't make that change now. One is that it would actually be more expensive and it would be more time consuming, both in needing to shop and plan how I'm going to eat. And then the preparation of vegetables, are you kidding me? The chopping and the like figuring out what you're going to do and seasoning, and veggies are just so much work. So it's more expensive and it would be very time consuming, and it would be sort of a lot of mental energy goes into food prep, I guess, when you're an omnivore. And then I think if I were to eat that way again, I would go back to the constantly resisting cravings. A little bit of starch, like if I had some kind of like legume-based pasta, a little bit of starch would make me want more and more and more carbohydrate. And I would be back at that point of hiding bags of cookies again. I'm like, no, no. um, so I don't have plans to go back to that, but I suppose out there, years into the future, maybe I will again. But right now, I don't have the money or the time or the mental energy to be an omnivore. What I learned in the midst of being a low carber is that carbohydrates really change the way your metabolism functions. If you eat any kind of carbohydrate containing food, whether that is a cracker or potato or alcohol or just a teaspoon of sugar, whatever it is, it will cause a spike in your insulin. And that will have a cascading effect through your metabolism. And the first thing that happens is that insulin tells your body to store fat. So all of us in the 90s who were carb loading so that we could go run to burn our fat, we were never going to get there. We were never going to get there because all of those carbohydrates had our insulin up and our body was never going to access our own fat. So, whoops, it was just something that people didn't really understand at the time, or it wasn't widely known. The thing that most of us didn't realize in the 80s, 90s, and many people still don't know this, is that your body can operate in sort of two basic metabolic states. And you can burn carbohydrates or you can burn fat. And when you're burning carbohydrates, most of us have experienced this. You eat a meal and like maybe you have breakfast and you have cereal and some orange juice and maybe you had an egg, which is great. I hope you did. But a lot of the breakfast is carbohydrate. The grain in the cereal, the sugar in the orange juice. If you had toast with jam on it, all carbohydrate. And you feel great, and then you head into your day, and an hour later, you're hungry again. You've crashed. And you kind of ride this roller coaster all day long of eating something with carbohydrate to get the energy, supposedly, and then your blood insulin rises. It gets all that sugar out of your blood, and then your blood sugar's low, and you crash, and you feel hungry again. And so you have another snack of sugar, and you feel okay again, and then your insulin is up again, and it draws all the sugar out of your blood, and again you crash. And so it's this hunger, or the hunger's down here, the energy's up here. Anyway, you ride this roller coaster when you're a carbohydrate burner. And I read a great book called, oh goodness, Primal Body, Primal Mind. Maybe I have the title right. The woman's name is Nora Gedgaudas. She's a fantastic writer about this, and she has a wonderful metaphor of you can be a sugar burner, a carbohydrate burner, and it's like lighting a match all day long. And the match burns out, and you got to light another one. And you really need that, but it doesn't last. It just doesn't last. There is another metabolic state, though, and a lot of people are starting to discover this and experience it for themselves. This is what the keto diet is about. Instead of lighting a match and it's short-lived, quick energy that you need to replenish all the time, when you start burning fat, it lasts a long time. It's what your body actually really likes. And instead of eating a bunch of carbohydrate and having your insulin rise to deal with all that sugar, don't eat carbohydrate, and your insulin stays relatively steady. You have all the energy from your food, and the insulin didn't rise. And so not only can you digest and use all the energy of your food, but your insulin didn't rise to block your body from burning its own fat. So you can also burn your own fat. And your body really likes this state. It feels good. So there's this difference between the two metabolic states of being either a carbohydrate burner or being a fat burner. And it's very similar to trying to stay warm by constantly lighting a match and light another and light another and light another, or just start a fire. Just start a fire, put a freaking log on it, and go about your day and be nice and toasty. So it's a very different metabolic state. And there is an adaptation time of switching your body and getting your body used to burning fat. But it's excellent. It feels really good. And the people who do a carnivore diet are not necessarily all trying to be in that metabolic state of ketosis. The ketogenic diet is it's kind of complicated. I actually never even wanted to try it because it was all about measuring and weighing and constantly knowing exactly how many grams of everything that you ate, and the ratio of calories from carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And it seemed like a lot of work. And as we've already seen, based on how I approach grocery shopping and meal prep, there was just no way that I was going to do the ketogenic diet. But I understand it in principle, and I think it's a great idea. And if you want to be an omnivore and eat a lot of different foods, it is a really great, healthy way to eat and have a lot of variety, but keep your body in a very healthy metabolic state. Most people following a carnivore diet aren't really pursuing being in the state of ketosis, but most are in a state of ketosis as sort of a side effect. Okay, so if I'm low carb, then why not just avoid grains? Why not be gluten-free, grain-free? What's so bad about vegetables? What's so bad about plants? Well, for the most part, nothing. For the most part, nothing. And I was a person who never had any, not that I ever noticed, no sensitivity to any food or plant. But what I've learned, and I have the links below, people who have taught me a great deal about plant biology and how your metabolism responds to them. There's mostly nothing wrong with eating vegetables, but plants do have chemical defenses. They don't want to be eaten, and they can't run away. So they are fighting back chemically. Some of the plant defenses are things that are very commonly heard of these days, like gluten. Gluten is a protein that is in the germ of wheat, and that's the baby wheat plant, and it wants to be in the ground, and it wants to have the chance to sprout and grow. And in the meantime, while it's still in the seed form, it's defending itself so that it doesn't get digested by anything. And then we go along and we harvest it and, mill it and all kinds of things, and it's in our food, but it's trying to defend itself from being eaten. Gluten has the property, not just in people with celiac disease, but in all of us. Gluten messes with the lining of your stomach. It opens up the tight junctions between the cells of your stomach lining. You don't want that happening. and so people can become sensitive when they've had so much gluten. Everybody is sensitive to gluten, not just people with celiac. Celiac is sort of the end stage of what wheat is turning us all into. So gluten is a well-known problem in plant-based foods, but it's not the only one. Every plant wants to survive, and especially all seeds of all plants want to survive. There are, in other vegetables and in their seeds and in other legumes, which are a seed, and nuts, which are seeds, there are lectins and phytates, and glycoalkaloids are the problem in nightshade plants. So if you've ever had trouble with tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplant, nightshades, the glycoalkaloids, a lot of legumes, and soy in particular, have xenoestrogens. And so it's not 100% estrogen, but it is an estrogen mimicking molecule. And yes, it will disrupt your endocrine system, whether you are a man or a woman. It is a plant defending itself and rendering you sick and unable to reproduce to keep eating it. I think that kind of wraps up my experience in a nutshell of what I've experienced on a carnivore diet and why I plan to continue as far as health reasons go. I feel the best I've ever felt, and why would I want to change that? Next week, like I've said, I will talk more about the food production side of it and how is it possible that eating more meat would be ethical for the environment, for the animals, etc. And I do feel strongly about that. And it's also where I'll get a little more into why I care so much about locally produced food. So, thank you for joining me. I realize this is a little bit out in the weeds, but it's kind of related to keeping a tight budget. Um, so, we will see you in a week.